So, Scotland's best places. This process emerged, I mean, Craig, you jump in as well, this process emerged probably in the middle of last year when we started to talk about things for the centenary year. And I think Alistair, Craig, others were all mindful of the types of prizes that were out there for placemaking, the likes of the Carbuncle Award and various other things, and there was almost a bit of a reaction to that. One, a reaction to anything that positioned places negatively, and secondly, a reaction to judgments on places being about buildings, architecture and design. What we really wanted to do was to really focus on where planning had a positive involvement in the creation of places. And so with that in mind, we started out this year with this public call for suggestions. We got some really good feedback for that. 55 places nominated, and then the formation of an expert panel. Listen, don't get your hopes up, I'm not allowed to announce who the winner is, so this is going to be, ultimately this is going to be a real letdown, which I'm used to be fair. So the kind of rationale really was, you know, where are the places that planning has had a significant involvement, a real positive involvement in, and also, truthfully, it was about getting ourselves, the public, the press, talking about planning, actually talking about planning in a positive light, and having a discussion about where planning's had a positive involvement in the country, or the development of the country. Okay, I'll just go through the places that were the top 10 that were nominated or came through onto the shortlist. Gorbals, which you will all know and no doubt have trudged around many a time on various site visits and case studies. I joined Glasgow City Council 1995, and Gorbals was already significantly underway. Crown Street was significantly underway by that point, and there was a real sense of positivity and almost a model, if you like, emerging for how we should do brownfield redevelopment over the future. I think actually, I question whether we've managed to carry all those lessons forward, but I think for me it was a great project. Dundee Waterfront, I think from my own point of view, probably one of the largest, most significant regeneration projects that we have in the UK at this moment in time, and obviously over a very large area. We have East Kilbride. I was slightly surprised in the shortlist that we only had one new town. I kind of hope Cumbernauld might make it in there, to be honest with you, just because it's had such bad press over the years about architecture and various other things. I thought that would be quite good to stick it to people. But you know, I mean, the fascinating thing about East Kilbride, as well as the process that led to it, 70,000 population in East Kilbride for a place that really started to develop, what's that, 40 years ago now, 50 years ago, something like that. It's interesting when we consider the broader debate on housing that we have on at the moment. More of that later. The Forth and Clyde Canal, which, as well as these set pieces like the wheel, like the calyx, the helix that's obviously just recently been completed, it's just that impact that it's had along its length, even right now through to Kirkintilloch, been voted canal capital, I think. Although I was at an event the other night where the leader of council in Falkirk was really quizzing that one, how Kirkintilloch managed to nip in and steal that award. Lerwick town centre. I mean, this one for me, I have to confess, this is the only project that's there that I have not physically seen, and I feel really like an ignoramus for not having been up and seen it. But again, in everything I've seen, everything I've read, a fantastic example of master planning and rediscovering an area that was neglected for many years. Loch Lomond in the Trossachs National Park. This wasn't me that took that photo. I've never been up that high in my life, unless it's in a plane at Mallorca. But no jokes. Anyway, that knows me. So again, you know, just another example of the richness and diversity and breadth that planning and planners are bringing to the country. The Merchant City in Glasgow, again fascinating. When I joined in Glasgow at that point, Merchant City was kind of down the dumps up for a wee while. It kind of dipped a little bit because of the property market. And then over the last 10, 12 years, it's it's really boomed again, and it's a fantastic place to go out and enjoy a night out as well as live and work and all the rest of it. Raploch, it's got a place in my heart. Certainly, I spent a couple of years working with many others in this room on that project, and again, significant housing-led, community-led regeneration master plan. The Royal Mile, and Holyrood North, which again a fantastic, fantastic example of planning in action, and then one that many of us may know, the West Highland Way, which I must admit was probably one of the most miserable bloody experiences of my life last September. But in terms of multi-agency working and all the rest of it, again, a great achievement and one we should be proud of. One of the most important aspects of the Best Places process has been the fact that it's actually gained some attention. It's actually got people talking about planning. It doesn't matter that they like what we do, but the fact is they're talking about it, and they're talking about, crucially, about outcomes. They're not dwelling on this thing about the planning process taken, so they're actually talking about stuff that planning and planners have contributed to and achieved. And I think that's very important. June the 26th, we have an event where we'll announce the top 3, and it's then later in the year that we announce them. But this is just killing me, Craig, honestly. Can we just say, no, okay, right. Okay. So I'm not allowed. And I think already the process has achieved what we set out to do, which was just to make the point that planning and planners have a great deal to offer this country and the future of the country. So I suppose the question for me is, well, okay, we're in this room, heads of planning. I'm fortunate over the years I've managed to get to a reasonable position in the private sector. Amongst us, between us, together, what are the next 100 years going to produce in terms of Scotland's best places? Where are the projects of the future? Interestingly, the Games was submitted. It was one of the earlier projects that was in there. Never made it through to the top 10, but I'm fairly certain the only reason that was the case is because it's still pretty much in construction. It's not there yet. That's certainly one of them. There are others. People in this room are involved in others. But just some thoughts to leave you with, and we can maybe chat about these over dinner or later, or you might just ignore me. I don't know. I think we've actually got a really good planning system in this country. I think we've got a really good hierarchy. It feels right. I do a lot of my work down in England, and believe me, our hierarchy's really good. It saves a hell of a lot of hassle. From a private consultancy point of view, we end up doing a lot of appeal work, and commercially that's not the end of the world, I'll tell you now. But the reality is that's not the way we should be planning. That's not what we should be looking for in Scotland. And I think the existence of our hierarchy and the approach we've put in place is a strength rather than a weakness. I was saying to Pam the other day, I was over in Germany, and it was a German planner we were speaking to about the Scottish system, and he made a really interesting observation, which was, right, okay, I get your structure. So the LDPs, they plan for your children, and the SDPs, they plan for your children's children, and the national plan, it plans for your children's children's children, yeah? I said, actually, that's quite an interesting way of thinking about it. No, but it's an interesting way of thinking about it, And I think it's really interesting when you think about the next 100 years and where you're going to go and where are our best places in the future. Because as Forbes said earlier, you've seen the timeline for the Commonwealth Games Athletes Village and the run-in that produced something of that type of quality. And I think that's something we should maybe think about. Oh, I knew your font always changes. I spent ages getting these right. So, and so the battleground at the moment for me, and some of you might have heard me talk, is housing. Currently that's where a lot of our debate and heartache is coming from. And we know that we're not producing the kind of housing levels that we need to. And for me, I've said on a number of occasions, it's no secret that I think that planning for housing is just too locally focused at the moment, and we've got lessons to learn from projects elsewhere where there's targets in national and regional plans. question I have in my mind when you visit these other places is, do we plan to accommodate growth? To create that space for an extra couple of hundred units, or do we plan, as they seem to do in the continent, to really stimulate growth, to really use housing as a fundamental part of economic growth? Do we plan long term enough? I mean, again, look at the timelines that led into the Games Village. Should we be planning 30 years or 40 years hence? Question, I don't know, but it's worth discussing. And do we work together to make sites effective? That's what that bit in the bottom says. So maybe could get away with something here, I don't know. And I'm just back from every couple of years, myself and a couple of colleagues, design architectural colleagues, go away we've been to Stockholm and to Hammarby, to Amsterdam. This year we went to Freiburg, all places that serve quite good beer, to be honest with you. And the lessons you pick up are many and varied, but when you look at a place like Hammarby, it's 6,000 units and the tram's in on day one and working on day one, full stop, okay? I'm not going to dwell on it anymore. They don't just plan for the transport system, they plan for the river and the sea as a transport system. You go to Eiburg, 16,000 units, land reclaimed from the sea. It's just down the road from Almere, which is another 35,000 units. All linked by tram, all linked by trains. It's all fundamental in terms of what they're trying to do. Freiburg in Germany, we went to Vauban, population of 5,000, it's about 3,500 units, give or take. It's really impressive, yeah, okay. Trams at the heart of it, trams in on day one, schools are in on day one, all publicly funded, I might add. The most impressive thing is that Reiselfeld is the same, and it's just down the road, and it's another 5,000 units, and there's another site, Williamstadt, that's just starting off, and it's another 7,000 units. And this is what they do. This is their planning. 15, 20, 30, 40 years in advance they're planning these housing numbers, whereas I quite often feel we're getting involved in discussions about whether we can add another couple of hundred units into the land supply and another 200 down. Is that an argument we really should be having between the public and private sector? I don't know, but it's worth the discussion, and we can do it. Forbes just ran through probably, I think, one of the best examples in the UK right now of where the private sector and public sector have come together to deliver good quality housing, family housing notably as well, not apartments, but actually front and back door family housing. And the lessons are, it's a simple recognition that if you want sustainable development in cities and towns, that's where it's at. You do it where the transport infrastructure exists, you do it ambitiously and you plan for the long term over 30 years. You don't get involved in debates between public and private sector as to whether your site is effective or not. You get together and say, right, how do we make it effective? Because it's the right site, frankly. That's where we should be growing, that's where we should be building. And community engagement is open and upfront. I remember being on a site visit, in a case visit. Anyway, I remember being on holiday in Bavaria with the Scottish Government a couple of years ago, and one of the developers asked the mayor or the planning director of planning, what happens when somebody objects to your plan? And I remember his answer was, well, why would they? Now there is a slightly Germanic aspect to that we should maybe be aware of, but I also think it's the fact that what he didn't understand was the fact that we plan for everybody. We plan 30 years in advance. You might not like the fact there's 5,000 units coming next to you, but they're not for you. They're for your children's children's children. That's the point. Okay, and we were pretty good at it. In the past, Gerris and others. It actually looks like that guy from Kings of Leon, but anyway, Gerris and others, the guys in Europe picked up many of the lessons from the way that we used to do this stuff in the past. And as we know, with East Kilbride, it's only 70,000 population, so we've done it in the past, we can do it again. And of course, while all this is going on, we have criticism from some people in the housing industry about the fault being with planners. Now, I think most of us recognise that that's not true. The slightly bizarre thing, when you consider the kind of shortfalls, etc. we have, is that rather than arguing for less planning, what I'm saying, what I think we should be talking about is more planning. Now's the time. We've got the system, We've got the opportunity, we need the culture to come through. That's not necessarily amongst planners, but amongst politicians, amongst private developers, amongst everybody else, to work together to try and get more planning, to try and close this gap in terms of house numbers and housing numbers and placemaking that we currently face. And you know, we put together some stuff for, I'm sure John had a laugh looking at it. We put it on we're going to put it in t-shirts actually, John, our submission to SPP. But it was all just about, for me, plan is really, really simple. It should just be back to basics. It should be, you know, let's plan where the public transport is. Let's plan where people want to live, where the stations are, where the infrastructure is. Let's plan, not to exclude brownfield development, which is always going to be a big part of it, but fundamentally also to consider greenfield development. You know, we get involved in these debates about the green belt and policy. Let's just plan where the best sites are, where the stations are, where the infrastructure is. Let's plan. Planning should be really simple, should be where the infrastructure is. And it shouldn't just be developing on any site anywhere. It should be developing where those opportunities exist and where the market wants to grow. And maybe even if we have a dialogue like that, we can find ways to plan ambitiously and think about money coming from greenfield development and coming in to support brownfield development or the delivery of infrastructure. We can't do this thinking 5-10 years in advance, but if we think 30 or 40 years in advance, I think that we could, and I think that we have. Oops. Did I do that? Yeah, I did. Right, okay. So, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only when everybody is involved. And I think this is also part of the issue about how we involve the broader public in this debate about planning, and that's why Best Places and programmes like Best Places are important. We've recently been, with Mother Hat on as a consultant, we've recently been shortlisted for the Wilson Economic Prize with the work that we've done down south into garden cities. And what you're seeing now, I don't know if any of you have seen the press recently, there's quite a significant push on garden cities emerging in English legislation. So, without further ado, we've got the system capable of doing it. I think national and regional level should prompt or deliver or push for more housing growth, shape housing growth, possibly even with targets. But hey, I'll leave that one for a discussion later on. But new housing is only part of the solution. This is really about the way we plan. And I think that, you know, what could we achieve if we really plan ambitiously and work together over the next 30 years? I think we could achieve a whole series of new best places. Interestingly, some of you were telling me earlier on that you were chatting in the train about the fact that I am enjoying staying at Premier Inn at the moment because I've sold my house and I've got nowhere to move into. So, and that's true. And the reality is, don't feel sorry for me because I get a house hopefully next Friday. But it's quite interesting. You know, it gives you a wee glimpse of what that quote actually means. When you don't have the house you want, when you're not lucky enough, as most of us in this room are, to live where you want and be where you want, and it's only a week or so or 2 weeks for my family, but there's a huge number of people, 195,000 people on the housing waiting list, huge number of people who are sitting at home trying to get out from under their parents and get into new housing. You know, we have a duty, public and private sector, to work together to find a way through this crisis. And that's our opportunity, and that's what, you know, I'm looking forward to working with you all on over the next 10 or 15 or 30 years. Thank you very much.